There's a quote that I really like by Teddy Roosevelt that says, do what you can with what you have where you are. And that's kind of the ironic thing, is that you might not be happy with a relationship or a job that you have right now, but if you go all in with where you currently are, in many cases, you'll find that you were the problem. It wasn't the job. It wasn't your wife. It was you. And when you fixed yourself, your wife, your job, your economic situation, and your life changed as a result of the influence you had on it. All right, Kipp, it's good to see you, man. Second time that we're going to go live on YouTube. So if anybody's not yet following us over on YouTube, please let us know. YouTube is so frustrating, man. We've got 335,000 subscribers over there, and our videos sometimes, on average, I'd say 1,500, 1,800 views. I know because I've talked with people, but our accounts are being throttled for sure.
Yeah.
And it's very frustrating. So, but they're the platforms we have. So we use them to the best of our advantage and do what we can do and use their tools against them. And here it is. This is what we're stuck with. And then there might be guys joining us from our Facebook group at facebook.com/group/Order of Man. They're able to come in and check this out as well. So glad we could do this. New technology. Very excited about it.
Yep, the evolution of things.
Yeah,
Should we get into highlights or headlines?
Yes, headlines. Yeah, absolutely. Let me pull up. Do you have a headline? I've got one today.
Yeah, I have one as well.
Okay, why don't you go ahead? Because mine's not so much of a headline as much as it is a call to action. So why don't you go ahead and lead us off?
Okay, excellent. So the FBI did a recent revision of their 2022 crime statistics, which adjusted the data to reflect a 4.5% increase in crime rather than the initially reported 2.1 decrease, raising significant concerns around transparency and public trust. The update added 1,699 murders, 7,780 rapes, 33,000 robberies, and 37,000 aggravated assaults to the original figures, which was made without public announcement in the FBI press release. And it just is a prime example of talk about undermining public opinion, manipulating public opinion, and just a major issue with trust around what is going on and the lack of transparency from a federal government perspective. And it's just a prime example of them meddling, probably in a political season. And it's disgusting and pathetic. I don't know what to say other than that.
It is. It's, the term that we've heard of is rigged election. And you always hear Donald Trump talk about a rigged election. And I think when he says that, he's talking more about the specifics of ballot harvesting and some of that stuff. And, obviously there's evidence of that. To the degree that there's enough that would overturn an election, I don't know that that's the case. But I think if you're just looking at it objectively, cheating happens. I mean, it's part of anything. So, of course, there's cheating going on. But the greater threat in my mind to rigged elections is the bureaucracy, it's lawfare, it's legacy media, rigging information that is passed down to us as citizens of this country in order to produce a desired outcome. So when Biden and Harris's DOJ comes out with a statistic or a report through the FBI that says, violent crime is down, and then has to come out later and say, no, we were off by 6 percentage points on the fact that it's not even down, it's actually up. And Trump actually said this, to his credit. Trump actually said this in the debate with Harris.
And got criticized.
And the moderator, quote unquote, fact checked him.
Yep.
And he said that wasn't accurate data.
And then this comes out.
This is the election rigging that's taking place. Yeah. Yes, there's some devious and deceitful ballot practices. I mean, I think about, for example, voter ID laws, things like that, ballot harvesting, it could be definitely a shady practice. But the greater risk is that we are all being manipulated through our Department of Justice and through the legacy media. And unless we can learn to cut through all of that nonsense, then we're never going to be able to have an election that's based on all of the information at hand. And that's what I want. I just want all of the information at hand so I can make the most informed decision, so that you and everybody listening can make the most informed decision, and then we can let the chips fall where they may. But there's very few objective media outlets. And objectivity is not a necessity as long as it's presented as being subjective. You know, I think of something like the Daily Wire. They're not an objective news source. They don't claim to be. But a place like CNN or Fox News or MSNBC, all of these places claim to be objective news sources, objective journalists, but they're clearly not. And that's the problem. They're lying and they're deceiving and they're attempting to rig an election through manipulation.
And I'm a huge advocate of how do we learn? What pivots and adjustments, right? Because it's really easy for us just to kind of complain about this, but how does this apply to my life? And one thing that I would use this as a learning opportunity for a lot of us of in what scenarios am I trying to manipulate people's perceptions, and I mince words, I leave out truths, I cut corners, I do things because I'm trying to manage what people or how people might perceive something. Use that as a red flag. We see this in corporate America a lot. Well, we'll do this for the greater good of our people. And really what we should be saying is if they might have a negative reaction to what we have to say, then should we be doing it? And if we're like, no, it absolutely needs to be done, then trust in people and be transparent. Because you're going to erode trust. It's not going to serve you in the long run. And so use that as a red flag for yourself. It's like, oh, well, I can't say that because, well, why can't you? All right, are you out of integrity? You need to clean something up. Should you actually be doing the thing that you're doing? And most importantly, that's up to other people to decide how they might respond to something. And sometimes the simple question we need to ask ourselves is, should it be said? Should they know? And if the answer is yes, then you do it, regardless.
Right. You know where else this unfolds is in the dating world. My girlfriend and I were talking about it just this last weekend, where a guy will go out, for example, with a woman, and a lot of the times women have trust issues because men are notorious for not communicating exactly what their intentions are. Yeah. And she had said something like, well, yeah, you know, if a guy comes in and says, hey, I don't want to date you forever, I just want to sleep around, you know, we were talking about, is that a good thing to say or not? And my thought is that's better than not saying it, but actually acting that way. So now you're sleeping around with other women. You've got this one woman on the line. She thinks you're trying to be exclusive or serious, and you're not interested in it. And I know why a man would do that. He would do that so that he doesn't blow his cover and can get all the play he wants. But it's better for somebody to just come out and say, hey, yeah, I'm just interested in fooling around and playing around than I am dating exclusively with one person. You know, you see that all the time. There's a page that that has been brought to my attention. It's like a Facebook group that I guess women will post guys' pictures on there. And it's called like, are you dating this person or something? No. And they'll post a picture on there, and then all the other women will chime in and say, oh yeah, I've dated that guy, or that guy's dating my sister right now, or whatever. And so they'll just blow these guys' covers. And there's also one for guys too. So there's two different versions, but it's a little off subject. But the point is, even at the micro level, just state your intentions. And when you do, you allow people to make their own decisions based on relevant, pertinent, accurate information.
And it's so easier, so much easier, less stress than
oh, for sure.
It makes
you
me
don't have to hide things.
About it.
You don't have to continually lie. And then not only do you not have to lie, you don't have to lie on top of lie on top of lie to cover up the first lie. And before long, there's a quote about it. You can't even remember what you were lying about. You either A, think it's true, or stumble all over your stories and get caught anyways.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
All right,
well,
Matt,
good
what
one.
do you got?
So my headline is in the world of politics, and this is not so much a headline, but I was listening to the news or something this morning, and they were talking about the disparity, the gender gap between women and men when it comes to voting. And I pulled up some statistics here, and generally speaking, women vote about 55% of the respondents or voters are women, and then 44 to 47% are typically men.
Really?
And so Yeah, so I pulled this up here. This is from Target Early. I don't know the credibility of this site. I'll go ahead and throw this out here right now. It looks pretty reputable, and I think it's legitimate. But they're looking at the early and absentee voting reports for this year's election. So this is as of October 21st, this morning, 2024, and it looks like my eyes are going bad. So it just takes me a second. 53% of the early voters, of the 13 million voters that have cast early ballots in the 2024 election, 53% are women. And 44.7% are male. Now you might be asking, where's the other 2 or 3%? Gender unknown, whatever the hell that means. 2.3% gender unknown. I didn't even know that was an option.
Oh, shit.
But I think it goes to just show that historically women vote in larger droves than men do. And I think that's unfortunate. Not that I don't think their voices should count, but that we should have accurate representation as men. And I think there are more women in the country, voting women, than there are men. So that represents a little bit of the disparity. But it's very, very crucial that men get involved, because you are going to be impacted by the decisions that are being made. And if we allow those decisions to be made by representation that don't represent us, then we're going to find ourselves in a spot that we don't like, appreciate, or might even be dangerous or destructive to our way of life. So guys, and I'm not going to tell you who to vote for. You all know at this point I'm voting for Trump. He's not the best candidate. I think we had a really great candidate in Ron DeSantis. He governs well. I think he presented poorly during the primaries, but he does govern very well. And that's what I want. I want a president who can govern well. And he did that, but that's beside the point. So here we are with our candidates. Make your choice, but make the choice and actually take some time, go do it. I've got my mail-in ballot right here. I just got it in the mail yesterday. So I'm going to be voting by mail. And you guys can do that too. Just make sure you cast your ballot. And I understand what a lot of you are probably already thinking. My vote doesn't count. It doesn't matter. Look, I'm not going to get into whether or not it does, but I will tell you this. If you don't, it definitely doesn't count. Yeah. If you don't do it, or if everybody thought that, it definitely would not count. It would increase the odds of our vote not counting 100%. So go vote.
I can't help but people that have that mentality, what other areas of your life are you sitting back going, well, my opinion doesn't matter, and there's nothing I can do. Like, there's trends. And when you show up powerfully in life, you show up powerfully. And when you're a victim and you're waiting for other people to dictate how your life happens to you, trust me, it's not just happening on the political side. It's probably happening in your marriage. It's happening in your family. It's happening in multiple areas.
It's just kind of a pathetic thing to say. Oh, it's almost like a victim or a weakness. Like, nobody cares about insecurity. Nobody cares. I'm not important. I don't like that. That's not anything that we've advocated over the past 9.5 years now.
Yeah. Absolutely. All right, so we're going to field questions from the Iron Council. To learn more about the Iron Council, you can go to orderofman.com/Iron Council. Our first question,
hey,
Peter.
Actually, Kip, before we do that, can I just, because we're trying to build up the live previews, can I just give precedent to some of the comments and questions that we had come in live already?
Yeah. In fact, I just saw one question that is very much related to what we just said. And so, yeah, absolutely. Do you want me to go ahead and read that?
Yeah, why don't you read that question? We'll hit on that, and then we can move over to the IC.
Yeah, so we have, there's a couple questions. There's two things I actually want to call out. So Franco, he asked the question, how politically driven are you? And so let's just address that, and there's a comment around the concept around the lesser of two evils.
Yeah, well, I'm extremely politically driven. What is the phrase? Politics are downstream of culture, or culture is downstream of politics, right? So everything that we do is impacted by the political realm. So for those guys who are thinking, I'm not very political, my vote doesn't count, I don't want to get involved, et cetera, you are involved. The only question is whether or not you're participating. You know, isn't it? What's that? Yeah. NCP or NPC, non-computer player. Have you heard of this? It's like in the gaming world. It's like a
when it's a bot or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what you are. You're running through a script. I'm not pointing anybody out individually, but I'm explaining the concept. You're running a script, and you aren't even in the game. You're there. You're present in the consequences of the game, but you're not actually an active player. What a pathetic way to live. So yeah, you should be informed. You should be educated. You should be running for politics. You should know who your elected officials are. You should know all of those things so that you can actually be involved in the process, because it is going to impact your income, your taxation, your school districts, your county lines, your zoning. Everything in your life is because of what politicians do, for better and more often than not for worse.
Yeah, and politics is integrating into our personal lives so much more than it ever has. And so I could understand back in the day where we might be like, politics, it's this thing over here. Are you joking? Politics is everything. That's dictating your school. It dictates what your kids are being taught. Like, there is no separation, certainly not anymore. And there's a lot of, to your point, there's a lot of influence on how politics shows up in our lives. So yeah, hop in there, Franco, if you're not. The other question was, what about those of us who would rather not vote for the lesser of two evils?
Yeah, actually, I can actually get behind that. Absolutely. I would rather, here's a few reasons you shouldn't vote. One, you're dumb. I don't want you to vote. I actually think it should be a little harder to vote. And how, heaven forbid I say that, it's a right. No, it's not a right. Where is it a right to vote? Now, it's a right to representation, but nobody has a right to vote. I think we ought to consider maybe making sure people have some sort of baseline knowledge about our political system before they go cast their ballot. I know that's going to be controversial, but we don't need more people to vote just to boost up the numbers. So a couple of reasons you wouldn't. You're dumb, you're ignorant about it. I actually don't want those people to vote, because I already know which way they're going to vote anyways, and I don't want those people to vote. And if you in your heart can't support a candidate, and let's take Trump for example, because there's a lot of people who listen to this who are going to be voting for Trump, and there's a lot of guys who are listening like, how could you? Look, if you can't, that's fine. Just don't vote. I understand that. I can see why that would be the case, and I don't think that you're obligated to vote because you're a citizen. Like, it isn't your patriotic duty if you don't feel like it's in your best interest. I don't agree with that necessarily, but you have certainly the opportunity not to vote.
Totally. Well, and when it comes to third parties, if we always voted the two political systems, then there would never be a momentum, right, and a disruption to the two-party system. And so if you're trying to buck the system a little bit and you want to create momentum, for me, I'd absolutely vote third party, knowing that they're not going to win, but like, they're never going to win unless people start taking action and showing that, like, hey, that's a viable approach, you know what I mean, to our politics. And so, yeah. So vote your conscience for sure, but at least do something, right?
Yeah, and I'm just pulling this up here real quick. So I have my ballot right here, and I'm not going to show it because I might have I don't think I have sensitive information on it, regardless. But we also have to remember, when we talk about this, everybody says or just assumes, oh, we're voting for president. Yes, true. But on here, we've also got U.S. Senate. You've got your U.S. House district, whatever district you're in. You've got your state offices, attorney general, state auditor. You've got state treasurer, state senators, county commissioners, county clerks, And then you've got a couple of different constitutional amendments for the state, that is, and other proposals, I'll call them, for changes to certain laws. So you might not want to vote for any of the political presidential candidates, but there's a lot of other reasons to vote that you might want to consider, because that's going to impact you greatly.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, we'll keep our eye on that chat, guys, as we go through these questions. All right, Peter Bentoncourt. I'm currently working through the interview process for a promotional possibility with my current employer. I've made it past my second interview and should be scheduled for a panel interview later this week. I've done my homework and I've been practicing over the last couple of weeks. Do you have any last minute tips when interviewing via a live call? Thank you.
I think Peter's probably been doing a great job. Just the fact that he's asking us this,
Absolutely.
He's already into the process. The one thing that I've seen a lot of people overlook when it comes to interviewing is they think because it's an interview that the interviewer is exclusively allowed to ask questions of the interviewee.
Yeah.
And one strategy that I've found that is really, really, it's valuable and it makes an interviewee, a candidate, look really engaged is asking thoughtful questions. And if that candidate can ask thoughtful questions, but you have to be a little careful because you don't want to ask too many questions, because then it comes across as peppering and a little bit weird. And you don't want to ask questions you should know the answer to either, because then you are showing that you did not do your homework. But if you ask thoughtful questions, something, and they can't be general either, like, what can I do to be good at my job? No, that's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
A thoughtful question, I don't know what line of work he's in necessarily, but a thoughtful question might be, hey, I know the distribution of sales in the company is 50% online, 30% brick and mortar, and 20% direct to consumer, whatever, right? Just whatever the allocation is. From where you guys sit, do you want to improve those numbers? And if so, what are your targets, so that I know if I were to come into this position, I can have an idea of what some benchmarks would be. Now, that might not apply to Peter, but I'm just giving an example. That's a really thoughtful question that shows that you've done your homework and that also you really care about what their objectives are. So I think asking questions, just a couple, you don't need it a lot, just a couple really poignant, well-timed questions go a really, really long way in an interview process.
Totally. Just to add to that same exact concept, and I mentioned this recently, I don't know to who, I share my opinion probably a little too often, so I can't relate, or I can't remember when I shared this, but have the mindset that you're the CEO and who you're interviewing for is the client. So what would you do in that scenario? You would understand your client really well. You would probably have a little bit of a strategy and game plan of what success would be like in that role and position. And then in this interview, what are you validating? You're confirming your understanding and a little bit of your game plan and where they see success measures and what does winning or what does success look like in that position, with a little bit of like peppering of what you think it should be, but you validating with them. I really do believe that if you go into this interview, Peter, with the perspective that this is a contract to some extent between you and them. You're not their employee. No, they might have the opportunity to hire you for your services. And so approach it from that perspective, and trust me, you'll have the right confidence, the right humility, the curiosity and the focus and the questions necessary to show up in a really powerful way when you think of it that way. And for that matter, everybody that has a job that feels like a little bit of their employer dictates what they do and what they don't do, all of us should stop and go, wait a second, no, I'm choosing to work for them. And maybe it will work for me. Maybe it won't work for me. This is an agreement. I own my own career. And are they paying me and creating me the opportunities to learn and grow? If they're not, then I am exiting. And while I'm here, I'm going to ensure that I'm successful to this employer / client. And if I'm not getting what I need to be successful, I'm going to go to you, Ryan, and say, hey, Ryan, for me to be successful in my position here, there's a couple things I need from you. And I need these things. And if I can't get them in time, I'm not going to be successful in this role. And we address those gaps, and we own our employment, and we own our services in that way. And when you do that, you will be a better employee, but most importantly, you'll be in a position of empowerment. And if you're not getting what you need to be successful, this is what top people do. They leave. Because why would I be at a company where I can't be successful in the role because they're unwilling to give me what I need to be successful? And you should. So I keep stretching all the questions to be applicable to more people, but I just can't help but think how many of us are victims of our employer, and we're sitting back waiting and hoping we get what we need to be successful. If you're not, address it head on.
Yeah. Well, I wrote down a couple things as you were saying that. Number one is every single person who has a job is self-employed.
Absolutely.
You are self-employed. You were deciding to go work for yourself. I love that view. And I wrote something else here because, well, you know, an example of this would be if I were to say to somebody, hey, you need to really serve your client. Somebody in the accounting department of a major law firm, for example, might say, well, I don't have clients. Well, absolutely you do. It's the partners, it's the law firm, it's the company that you're working. That is your client, to your point. And here's one thing I wrote down that I think we really need to make sure we hit on. Because you said if you don't get what you need, you can leave. You can only leave assuming that you have another client. So as a person who is self-employed, which now we've identified as everybody, you should always be building out your network. If you're an accountant at a major law firm, you should be friends with every partner in every single law firm in your area. You should be working with other financial planning practices and getting to know them and taking them to lunch and going on golf outings with that. You should be networking your tail off, not with the expectation that you're going to leave or anything like that, but the opportunity. So if you decide, hey, this is not cutting it, my client's not getting me what I need, and I've got to leave, you've got 10 people that you can make a phone call and be back to having a good client in a matter of 24 hours. So never believe in your quote unquote job security. Sales guys don't believe in that. They're always out selling. Well, you're a sales guy too. You're just not admitting it. So make sure you're networking. That's the last thing I'll add on to that point.
I love it. All right, Daniel McKenna, do you feel there's long-term solution for our country politically? It feels like every once in a blue moon, we get someone who does some good for our country, but is quickly undone by the next administration. With so much corruption, the country being in $34.4 trillion of debt, and a great number of people refusing to wake up to the destruction of our nation, it often feels like an unwinnable battle.
Well, it's yes. And generally what's going to happen is that it's going to just continue to get worse until it falls apart. Like, I hate to say that, but that's really what ends up happening. You know, think about how many countries have eroded, how many countries have disbanded, how many cultures have come and gone to greatness. The odds are of that happening is likely. Something's going to happen, whether it's division within the country, absorption through another country. This is going to happen. People don't believe it is unless we can get this thing right. And I think we can. A couple of things that we need to do are we need to close down the border, 100%. Now, I'm not saying don't let people in. I'm saying close it down and start vetting who is coming into this country. We need the biggest, the brightest, the best. Now, some people will say, well, that's not what the U.S. was founded on. It was founded on give us your poor and your disparaged. I can't remember the exact term. But here's the difference. People who came to this country 200, 300 years ago, they were here to actually work.
They weren't
to actually contribute,
handouts.
To get their piece of the pie that they went and carved out themselves. They migrated from the east to the west, and they faced, you know, savage tribes and famine and difficulty and the natural elements in order to go to somewhere that had never been explored before and to create something for their families. And they did it at great risk. But when somebody comes into this country now illegally, yeah, they're here for an opportunity for sure. But it's on the back of all of the work that actual Americans have created. It's the economy, it's the stability, it's the infrastructure, it's the logistics of this amazing country. And that's the distinction. Is if you could guarantee me that somebody was going to come here and work their tail off, and you can not guarantee that, but you can do that through vetting, then that's a person that we want here, somebody who's going to participate truly in the American dream. But it's not the American dream, and it never has been, to come here and mooch off everybody because you can't do it in your own country. That's where I take issue. So close the borders. We also need to make sure that we get a hold of this debt. We need to stop acquiring so much debt, and there should be accountability that debt needs to be, I'm talking about the national debt. There needs to be a national deficit in that debt. And here's what I mean when I say deficit, because politicians are notorious for their being silver-tongued. If we acquire $2 trillion worth of debt this year, and then next year we acquire $1.9 trillion of debt this year, politicians call that a deficit. That's not a deficit. We just spent a little less than we did the year before, but we're still 1.9 trillion more in debt. An actual deficit means the deficit went from, what is it right now in 2024? $35 trillion down to $33 trillion. That's a deficit. And if politicians can't do that, if our government cannot do that, then we should oust every single one of those rats, because that's exactly what they are. And they're putting that debt on the backs of our children and our grandchildren. But yeah, we gotta maintain national sovereignty and control of our finances. Unless we can do that, we're done. We're done. It's just a matter of time at this point.
A quote by Warren Buffett. He was quoted this on CNBC, saying that he could end the deficit in 5 minutes. He says, you just pass a law that says that anytime there's a deficit more than 3% of GDP, all sitting members of Congress are ineligible for re-election. Done.
That's actually a good way to do it, because the reason that we're in this mess is because they want to get reelected.
Yeah, so they overpromise.
Right. I mean, Kamala Harris did it just recently. She said that we're going to give, I think she narrowed it down specifically to black business owners, or maybe just black people in general, a $20,000 forgivable loan. What now? Like, first, that's illegal. So there's no way that's going to fly. Yeah. Second, it's not the government's job to give people money. You know what you could do? Give everybody a $20,000 tax credit, or maybe a 5% tax credit, or maybe reduce all of that taxation that you're imposing on people and let them deal with their money the way they best see fit. But it's these programs that we keep putting in place. Medicare and Social Security are bankrupting this country. And no politician can vote against it, because the minute they do, all the baby boomers start getting up in arms and teary-eyed about it, because they don't want to lose their benefits they work so hard for. Sure, they don't care about the remaining generations of this great country, but no politician can even touch it.
Yeah.
Because they won't get voted again. Well, that's a great way to end that problem, is if you don't touch it, you won't get voted, because you're not eligible for re-election.
And thus they don't make the tough decisions and and have the difficult conversations, and they continue to overpromise and then just underdeliver as politicians. One thing that you mentioned, Ryan, that I think is fascinating that we need to remember is you can't have a welfare state and an open border. Those two things are absolutely in conflict with one another. We use the example of, in the early, founding areas of this country, there was no handout. People came here for literally one reason. It was to claim land and to have freedom. That's it. No one was going to save them. No one was giving them handouts. The difference now, we have government systems that will take care of you. We have all kinds of handouts, and you have an open border. That doesn't work. Like those two items will compete with each other in a very negative way.
I'll give you an example. My girlfriend and I, earlier in the year, we went down to Del Rio. We went and hunted down there, but we ended up driving down to Del Rio to grab some lunch. And We were talking with one of the guys that we hunt with. He's the outfitter or guide there. And he said, hey, did you see anybody in Del Rio with a yellow folder, I believe? And I was like, a yellow folder? No, I don't think so. Like, neither of us had seen that. And he said, oh, I said, what does that mean? He's like, oh, if they have a yellow folder, it means they just crossed into the country, and that's all their documentation, along with their $1,400 check just for coming across the border. What are we doing?
Silly.
What are we doing? And it's that, if that's all it was, we could manage that, but that's not all it is. It is such a strain on the backs of hardworking Americans, and nobody seems to care about it at the levels where they can actually do something about it.
Yeah. All right, Joe Gunter, can you meet your goals without some form of spirituality?
Sure. Goals are amoral.
Yeah. Why do you think Joe asked that question?
School shooters going to shoot up schools and kill kids. That's a goal.
Yeah.
Your goals are amoral. So you can complete any goal, that you, I guess, put your mind to. Spirituality is not required. Now, I would say, I think in the spirit of the way that you're asking it, I think goals ought to be virtuous. I think they ought to be moral and righteous pursuits. But I don't think that it's exclusive to righteous pursuits. But as a man who's trying to do good and be a moral, upstanding person, then for me, having an element of spirituality, knowing that even the decisions I make today are going to play impacts not only in this life, but the next, keeps me a little bit more in check.
Yeah.
So I think something that's bigger than ourselves is crucial. Having a moral compass, because if you don't have that moral compass, and by the way, I've really debated on this with atheists, like, do they have a moral compass? And I'm going to get to that in a second. But if you don't have a moral compass, nothing matters. And you're going to rob, steal, cheat, do whatever you can to get out ahead of whatever you want. So yeah, I think it's not required, but I think we ought to have an element of spirituality built into our plan. That's what keeps us moving in the right direction.
What were your comments on atheists?
Oh, yeah. I've often wondered for years, and this is the debate, if atheists don't believe in God, do they have a sense of morality? Well, I know plenty of atheists and agnostics who have a deep sense of morality. I would trust them with my kids. I could leave my safe open right here with $10,000 of cash, and I could trust them to house sit for me and not have to worry about my guns or money. Like, I think it's still, for an atheist, that sense of morality is still there. And you might say that, oh, well, it's a cultural sense of morality. They wouldn't do it because they'd get in trouble. That might be part of a reason.
Yeah.
We all do that, right? For example, speeding. Yeah. I would speed everywhere, and I'd go 20 miles an hour over everywhere if I didn't think that there was a cop around the corner. So all of us do that.
Yeah.
So I think it really is just inherent in us as human beings. And I believe in some instances it can be overridden through learning, and I'm not saying this is a good thing, but it can be that sense of morality can be overridden through learning and brainwashing and exposure to certain things. It can be ignored. You can certainly ignore it if you choose to. But ultimately, I think it's there inherent in all of us.
Yeah, I agree. Charles Phillips has a question, around advice for guys returning to the Iron Council. And Charles, I'm going to add to your question just so, because a lot of our listeners may not be a part of the IC. So maybe said another way, what advice do you have for someone getting back on the path of getting their life in order, being goal focused, and trying to improve their lives?
Well, let me give you a different example, and it might seem silly at first, but I think it'll underscore the concept here. Let's say it's Friday afternoon, and you look in the mirror, and you're like, man, I don't look good. I'm putting on some weight. I'm not looking real good. On Monday, I'm going to go back to the gym. I'm going to go back on Monday, and I'm going to get after it.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fine. Monday,
very
you should.
Common.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so let's just, for the sake of argument, say you cannot go to the gym until Monday. The question then is, what do you do until Monday? Do you just eat everything? Do you slack off? Are you lazy? Do you do nothing? Or do you like just double down? You start eating clean on Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday. You go for a walk with your family. You go for a hike because there's a mountain out there. You do some push-ups when you roll out of bed. If you were serious about it, you would do what would be needed to be done right now. And so when it comes to the Iron Council or going to the gym or improving your family situation or looking for a new job, the answer is always do what you can right now. Do what you can right now. And then on Monday, when that gym comes available, you better get your butt into the gym. But there's plenty that you can do right now. And so for guys coming into the Iron Council, the question is, what should we do? Well, we have the systems. You do the system. It's not really even a question. Even if you're a returning member, do the system. So I don't really know what to say other than that. Sometimes people think it's not enough or maybe there's something different. No, it's just do the system. And sometimes the system isn't sexy. You know, when you go into the gym and you hire a personal trainer and he says, do this many reps, this many times, and this much weight, and you're going to do that 5 days a week for the next 2 months, that's going to get tiresome, but do that. That's what works. I know it's not sexy. I know it's not exciting, but that's not really what we're after. We're after results. So do the system, but until you get to the system, do everything else that you can.
Yeah. And in the live chat, Rick asked the question, you know, when is enrollment for the Iron Council open again? That's more likely going to be December 15th, Rick, you know, roughly half a month before the beginning of Q1.
Yes. Cool. Yep, that's right. We usually do that. We open up every single quarter, but enrollment starts 2 weeks before the quarter. So we have a 2-week open enrollment window. So that'll be December 15th-ish.
Yeah. Something you said, Ryan, that I think is profound. You know, we use the example of, you know, Charles coming into the Iron Council or goal setting or getting our fitness in check. But some of us might be sitting in jobs that we don't enjoy, right? And we're trying to find the new job, right? Or we just got divorced and we're trying to find the next thing, right? Like there's examples of kind of being where we are, not an ideal state, and looking for something better. And you said there's power in addressing it where you are. And we've mentioned this multiple times on the podcast. And I think it would be valuable for us to remind guys, like, even if it's the scenario of job, the answer's the same. Oh man, I really hate this job. I got to get out of here. Okay, yeah, but until then, win where you are. Like, kill it where you are. Be amazing where you are. Far too often, I think we're constantly looking for the thing to change for us to show up in a great way, and we're losing out on all the opportunities to grow where we are. And the unfortunate part is it's probably on the backside of doing all of the shitty work that you don't want to do. And that's the very thing you should do to set up the next step for you in life. And that principle is transcendent across, you know, new jobs, new career, getting to the gym, or even, you know, looking for a better relationship. If you can't, like, win where you are, there's huge power in that.
There's a quote that I really like by Teddy Roosevelt that says, do what you can with what you have where you are. It's as simple as that. And speaking of that, on the subject of relationships, we had a guy in the Iron Council who is on the verge a little bit of whether or not he wants to continue in a marriage. And it's a pretty lengthy marriage, but they've had some real problems over the past years. And it sounds like she really wants to work on things, and he's kind of on the fence a little bit as to whether or not he does. But he said that he would. And I had a conversation with him last week, and he's trying to decide, do I stay in the marriage, do I not? And I said, you know, stop for a sec, because the first thing that you need to do is go all in.
Yeah.
Because you haven't. And the way that he was saying things and the way he was talking about it is said, I would, but I said, you go all in first, and then do that for a couple of months, and then let's talk. But we're not going to make decisions until you actually go all in and stop riding the fence. Now, I would love in the next 2 months for him to come back. I don't know if this will happen, but it has happened in the past for him to come to me and say, hey, man, you know what? I actually want to continue to work on this relationship. I was halfway in, halfway out. You told me to go all in, so I did. And I can actually see improvement in my relationship. And that's kind of the ironic thing is that you might not be happy with a relationship or a job that you have right now, but you're sitting on the fence. You're not doing the work that needs to be done. And so you think the grass is greener over there. But if you go all in with where you currently are, in many cases, you'll find that you were the problem. It wasn't the job. It wasn't your wife. It was you. And when you fixed yourself, your wife, your job, your economic situation, and your life changed as a result of the influence you had on it. And maybe it's not as good as where it needs to be because you're not as good as you need to be or can be. So go all in first, and then we can talk about quitting, changing, transferring, divorcing, all that kind of stuff later. Go all in first.
Absolutely. Woody Lord, 3 ways money can buy happiness is by eliminating discomfort, improving health, and increasing freedom. What are some things you guys have spent money on that was well worth it or had a great ROI in your personal life?
What were the 3 again?
Eliminating discomfort, improving health, and increasing freedom.
I would definitely say discomfort and health. I don't know about, discomfort and
Freedom.
Freedom. The health thing, I don't know. I mean, you could maybe buy some better groceries. You could get a gym membership, but you still have to go do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't really chase happiness. I want to be happy, sure, as a byproduct of me having a fulfilling life, but I don't really chase after that. And maybe we're just getting into some semantical differences.
Yeah.
I'd much rather chase fulfillment. So in the spirit of the question that you asked, for me, spending money on a vacation with the people that I love is well worth it to me. If I can get away, like my girlfriend and I, we got away to Vegas this weekend and we did a cool hike and we went and saw the Sphere in Vegas, and we just had a really walked the strip in Fremont Street and saw the weirdos. Like, it was a really good time, and it was well worth the money that I spent to go down there and enjoy that with her.
Yeah.
If I'm going to take my oldest son, hunting with me, we went to Africa a couple of months ago, and to do that with him, man, I remember his smile. I remember the conversations that we had, and all of that brought me, yes, a sense of happiness, but fulfillment as well, because I was able to fulfill and realize some dreams and goals that he's had since he was 2, since the time he could talk. So investing in those trips with loved ones is really valuable for me. The other one is investing in my own self-development. So a gym membership would certainly fall into that.
Yeah.
If I get that, I have that gym membership and I go and I work out, I'm stronger. I feel better about myself. I'm healthier. I have more energy, more clarity, more drive, more focus. Maybe it's a course that I need to buy on how to market on TikTok better or something. Buying something that's going to help me develop and get better in every facet of life has always proven to pay dividends. So I would say that's the 2 places that I spend the most money that brings the most fulfillment and happiness to my life.
Yeah, I'm the same way. I mean, it's France with the family. Was that last summer before last? It's trips to Hawaii. Like, as silly as it is, like my ability to put money to train to go do jiu-jitsu is
not silly at all.
Major investment for me that is so worth it.
Why do you say that's silly? Just out of curiosity.
No, just how meaningful that is.
Right.
That is so meaningful. It's not like,
people
you
who
learned some
don't
martial
do it-
arts. It's like, no, it's so part and so valuable to my life. I would pay even way more money than I pay for what I get.
So what you're saying is that it's not silly to you, but from the outside looking in, it may seem silly.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Only to people who have never done it. And it doesn't have to be martial arts, but it could be hunting. For me, it's hunting.
Yeah.
I'll do that. The way you do that with jiu-jitsu, I'll do that with hunting.
Yeah.
And people are like, I can't believe you spend that much time and money. Yeah, because you don't like it the way Alan comes to mind. He races RC cars
Yeah, totally.
across the country. Like he has an RV where him and his wife will load up and they'll go get an RC, like go race other grown men with RC cars. And it sounds silly.
It does super sound silly. Yeah.
Because it's not our thing. It's not silly to him. He
No,
loves
he's
it.
like
He finds
legit
so much
hardcore.
fulfillment in it.
Yeah.
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 And I think that's awesome. Find your thing, whatever it is.
Yeah, totally. The only thing I'd add is time, flexibility of time. And I've shared that before, right? That's probably what wealth has, that's the increasing freedom is time. The margin and the ability to not be stuck in a grind of a 9 to 5, the ability to have flexibility to then experience things. Because some guys might be listening, it's like, well, I'm not in a position to fly to Africa. I can't take my family to France for 2 months. Yeah, but you know what you can do? Is hike the mountain together, to go camping together. And trust me, those experiences are amazing and they don't take much money, but they require time.
Yeah.
And so I think financial freedom is more about my availability of time, probably more than it is anything else.
I would agree with your time. I would also agree with your own mental well-being. I'll give you a little bit of a counterintuitive example that hits mental well-being and time. Completely counterintuitive. And I never would have done this 2-3 years ago. When I moved back to southern Utah, I've got a home about 15, 20 minutes from where I live right now. And I was considering it, but it was being rented out. We have a property manager. They are renting it out. And I told the property manager, hey, I'm moving back. We're going to have to have the tenants leave. I'm going to move back when the lease expires. And he got it all taken care of. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, man, this is cash flowing. Like, it's doing well. I'll be a little further away from the kids. I don't want to have that. So I was going to buy a house. But with everything that was going on in my life at the time, buying a house, it was a lot. It was really overwhelming and daunting. And so I decided to rent. And so I found this really great place. And it's the place that I'm in right now. And here's my monthly payment. And utilities are included. Electric and internet's included. I don't have to mow the lawn or the back lawn. None of that stuff that they take care of that. My neighbors are great. I love my neighbors. They look after my dog when I'm away. Like I live in a great place. And 3 years ago, I never would have said, "Oh yeah, you should rent." And now I'm like, I don't know if I ever want to leave. My garbage disposal last week went out, and I called the landlord. I'm like, hey, the garbage disposal's out. He's like, cool, I'll send somebody over in the next couple days. Guy came over, friendly guy, replaced the thing. And he's like, see you later. He didn't hand me an invoice. I didn't need to give him a check. He took that up with the landlord. I'm like, this is kind of nice, actually. Yeah. And so it's a little counterintuitive. And I'm not saying everybody should own or rent or whatever. Figure out what works for you. But for me, not having to worry about that, I'm actually in the market for a house right now, but a rental, not something I'm going to live in, another rental property, because I kind of like this arrangement just for my own mental well-being. Totally. I can focus on other things that are way more important than fixing the garbage disposal in my house.
Well, and it goes back to the book. One of my favorite books on this is Essentialism. It's like time, and what I'm hearing you say, Ryan, is energy. Like, where are we spending our energy? And I don't know about, like, when we lived in New York, I lived in New York for a couple years. We had this small apartment, lower Manhattan, and it was simplistic. Why? Because the shoes I had in my closet were the ones I wore. The clothes that I had were the clothes that I wore. The groceries that we shopped for were the groceries that we ate. Like, it was so nice because I didn't have this freaking garage with a bunch of shit that I'd never use, that I'm managing, that it's like all this energy just distracted me. And it's like this burden. I've heard this earlier this year, but like, and it's really been present for me too, is like a lot of my mental happiness is really around energy management. Not time,
yeah, I agree.
It's energy management. Yeah. And what's sucking my energy. And sometimes just having so much crap that I never use is like one of the most, like the biggest sucker of my energy.
Yeah, it's the adage, what you own owns you.
Yeah, totally. It's so true. Yeah.
Do we have any comments in the chat that we need to go through before we get to the next question on IC?
No, just Rick
Just some
kind of
comments.
pinging guys saying, hey, you should join the IC if you're not already.
Nice.
So
Thank you,
appreciate that, Rick. Yeah. Joe Marino, he's curious, man. Montana Knife Company fan. He's curious, particularly which one that you own.
Oh, which one? Did he say it that way? Which one?
Which knives? He did assume that it was more than one. So good job there, Joe. You're correct.
So here's what I own. I own the stub horn, the flat tail. Hold on. We got to get back to the rest of them, and then I'll give you some real. Let me do this.
They're
Okay,
in the safe with his 10K and all his guns.
That's right. So the Speed Goat, the Magna Cut Speed Goat, the Blackfoot, the Stonewall, the Super Cub. Ooh, I don't know that one. The Jackstone. I don't know that one. The Marshall, the Beartooth. I own them all. I have the culinary set. I have all of them. There's actually a few I don't have that I'd like to get here. But you know what? I'll give you some input here. Let me just pull this up. Oh, I don't have their fillet knife either. I need to get a fillet knife. The one that I like the Speed Goat. That's a very small.
That's the one you took hunting, right? Was the Speed Goat?
Probably. I take that one hunting quite a bit. Yeah. It's just nice. It's small. It's versatile. It's very thin. It's very lightweight. I think he asked if that's the one that I carry around personally as well. It's either that or the War Goat, which is their tactical blade. That's a new one I just got. But I really, really like the Speed Goat for that. The Stonewall is probably one of my favorite knives. And the Stonewall is great for skinning, breaking down meat. Sure, I still would probably go to the Speed Goat on breaking it down because it's smaller and you get better cuts. But yeah, I would say between the Stonewall or the Speed Goat, you'd be pretty set. But yeah, I love them all, man. I've got so many different Montana knives.
We need to, you, since you have the influence, you need to get him to, have you seen kind of knives like grappling knives? Have you seen those?
Oh yeah.
With
kind of like the thumb. Yeah. And it's like curved,
so,
like curled. Yeah.
Yeah. So you could be in a grappling match and then you don't have this weird cut this way. It's
right.
You know what I mean? As you hold on to things.
Yeah. And I don't know for sure, but they might be working on that because they have their tactical stuff.
Okay,
so,
cool. They could call it the grappler.
That would actually be cool. I should tell them about that. But they should just call it the Kipp.
The Kipp Mora.
I don't even. Yeah, Kipp Mora. That's right. I don't even see their tactical knives on here, but they do have. Oh, here it is. Oh, they don't have them on here. But there's two different ones. One's the War Goat, and the other one is the Battle Goat, which I don't have the Battle Goat yet. They're great at naming stuff too. So,
yeah, that's awesome. All right, last question from Tony Myers. Where does the Iron Council see itself on members or potential members that follow a polytheism, nature-based spiritual following? I thought this is a great question because guys might make the assumption, right, of what this looks like in the IC.
I don't care. Not that I'm indifferent to it, but that is not an impact for me. What I care about are the guys who are coming in. Do they want to be righteous men? And if you want to be a righteous man, then I want you part of the Iron Council. If it's polytheism, if it's more of a spiritual, holistic, earth type based, if it's the Muse, if it's Christianity, Catholicism, Buddhism, I mean, name it. If you want to be a righteous man and you're here to learn and you're here to serve, then we're all about it. Now, I will say, with that being said, I'm the founder of Order of Man and the Iron Council. I'm Christian. So a lot of the messaging that you're going to hear is framed with a Christian undertone. We're not overtly spiritual or religious, but you're going to hear a lot of the things that I share are going to be very much in alignment with Christianity. But you know what? There's truth everywhere. And many of the things that he believes, I'm sure overlap and align with Christianity. We probably just say it a little different.
Totally.
That's not a concern of mine.
And maybe I'm going out on the limb here saying this. I don't think I am. But I do think one thing that we do expect, though, is to guys have to be critical thinkers and not be so easily offended, right? Like, and that's what I love of what I have seen in the Iron Council is we've had group discussions with guys that aren't religious, that might be atheists, and they're nodding their heads going, oh, that's a really interesting principle based upon what someone brings up in the Bible. That's exactly what should happen. And we shouldn't be showing up going, oh, well, these guys don't believe what I believe, and now I'm going to choose to be offended. That is not going to probably cut it in the IC. Doesn't serve you, doesn't serve anybody else, right? And to be frank, you're being a little
biatch.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out a better way of saying that. But you know, have some critical thinking, and we do expect that. Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah, I actually think the same thing with regards to sexuality. You know, I get a lot of messages from men who are gay who say, "Hey, is this okay for gay men?"
Yeah.
Yes. Like as long as you're there to learn and grow and get better and pursue something meaningful and significant and do good for other people with other people. Yes. Well, what does that have to do with it?
Totally.
You know, and I have actually been surprised at how accepting our Iron Council members are of gay men.
Totally.
I'm grateful for it, but honestly, I've been surprised. We've had a lot of gay men who are like, man, like I'm really glad I came here, because on the surface, if you're just looking at it and scratching the surface, you might, and you're a gay man, you might not think that you'd be welcomed. But I have found the opposite to be true of just about every single one of our members. It's pretty fascinating to me. I like this quote. This one's by Aristotle. He says, "It is the mark of an educated mind to be able to entertain a thought without accepting it." And I feel like that's what we do really well inside of the Iron Council, is that we have these thoughts and we don't always agree. People have come after me. I've gone after other people. Yeah. It's always done from a position of, hey, I care about you. I want to understand what you're thinking. I don't agree with it, but I'd like to know more about it. And it's just, not only is it a mark of an educated man, but it's a mark of maturity. Like, I don't have to get up in arms because you don't believe in God. You know, and I see this a lot of the times when you mention Christianity, a lot of people will use the term, oh, your little sky daddy, or things like that. And I can never wrap my head around why somebody would try to be deliberately insulting to a person who's trying to do right and good. I don't understand. Like, regardless of where that sense of good comes from, if that person's trying to do good and it comes from a place that you don't believe exists, I don't understand why mock that. I would think you would embrace that.
Yeah. Like, well, it's rooted in.
I don't agree with what you're saying, but I see that you're trying to do good and you're trying to add value to the world and you're being a good dad. So like that should be enough.
Yeah. Well, I was just gonna say it's rooted in their own self-validation, right? That's what it's really rooted in. It's not rooted in anything other than that.
Well, to be fair though, Christians and other religions do the exact same thing. Yeah. You know, they look at other people judgmental, less favorably, not welcome. So, I mean, it's not exclusive to people who don't believe in God. It's also pretty notorious in those circles who, you know, want to make other people feel less than because they don't believe in their God. So I see it on both sides, to be fair.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, sir. Well, that's a wrap. You know, that was fun. Thanks to the guys that actually, you know, threw some questions in the live chat. Really appreciate you guys listening in. As always, you can connect with Ryan on X and Instagram at Ryan Michler. And we did mention, and there was a comment earlier about men's groups. Although the Iron Council is closed until December, you can join us on our Facebook group, and that's facebook.com/group/Order of Man.
There's one other reference and resource that I want to give the guys. So on May 1st through the 4th of 2025, that's our first event of the year. This one's really cool because I've never done this and I haven't seen many other people do this, if at all. I've partnered with 3 other notable people in the men's space. And what's interesting is so many industries look at all of that as competition. They would never collaborate on anything, never in a million years. Yeah. But we've decided to, because I think, yes, technically you could say that it's competition, but we think that our mission of helping men is more important than the perceived competition of it. So I've partnered with Larry Hagner with The Dad Edge, Connor Beaton with Man Talks, and Matt Boudreau with Apogee Strong to create this event May 1st through the 4th, 2025, just outside of St. Louis. And if you go to themensforge.com, you can get registered. There's the standard package, there's the VIP package, there's payment plans, but it's going to be a conference style with the Order of Man spin on it, where you won't just hear from a bunch of guys, including our guest speakers coming in, talk at you. You're going to hear from them speak with you. They're going to be available to spend time with you, to answer questions, and we're going to be hyper engaged in other activities that are going to help build teamwork and camaraderie and support and learning about each other and facilitate growth beyond just what we're going to do over that weekend. So again, if you go to mensforge.com, you can check it out.
Awesome.
All right, guys, great questions today. Keep them coming. We'll keep answering them. And we'll be back on Friday for the Friday Field Notes. Until then, go out there, take action, and become the man you are meant to be.